Welcome to the Digital Remodeler podcast. We're so glad that you've joined us today. Joining me today is Alex Miranda from Virtrify, and we're going to be discussing how you can use virtual teams to scale up your home remodeling business. So, Alex, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Carl.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. We're going to be talking about virtual teams. You're the master in this. So let's talk about some of those problems that you commonly find with business owners challenges that virtual teams can be a real solution for.
Yeah, I think let's start by defining virtual teams because you've got, I like to call it a hybrid model in business where you've got your physical employees, right, that work in the home office. And then you can build a virtual team to support those growth initiatives, to support those people so that the people in your office are really doing high level tasks, really doing a lot more of the high level thinking of the business, and that the admin work is actually being done by a virtual team. Virtual, in my sense, is not someone in the same state, but just sort of in another city. In my terminology of it, they're in another country, and in my case, they're in Venezuela. So they're on our side of the hemisphere. They are on our time zone. They're culturally aligned with us, and they're able to be 9 to 5 employees like any other employee in the office, except they're at their house and they only cost $11 an hour, whereas an employee in the office costs 20, $30 an hour. And well, that leads to the kind of the big reason why we build virtual teams, right, Carl, is they cost half as much as employees in the US and yet still put out the same output, if not more. And what that does for an entrepreneur, well, it means more profit. And we get to take home more of that. For some businesses, it means you can lower your costs, or you don't have to keep raising your prices, because as employees ask for more money, you have to charge more. It's just what it is, right? So we can start to stabilize price increases, possibly even bid on projects or bid on services at a lower price because your admin costs are much less. And then I think one of the biggest benefits for entrepreneurs building virtual teams is that the entrepreneur himself or herself is freed up from admin work. This is the work that it stays in our head as we're going home. We bring it home with us. Some of us stay up till 9, 10 o'clock at night because we got to do the admin work, right? We were doing the physical work at work, 9 to 5, and we're punting the admin work for the nighttime, just robbing our time with our families, robbing our personal lives, our lives from the gym. And so really, this is one client put it very well. This is a buy back time initiative. When we're building virtual teams, where because they're $11 an hour, right? You start to think, oh my gosh, they can do this thing for me. They can do that. And now you're freed up so that you can think on a more high level basis for your company. You can go to networking events finally, right? A lot of times we don't go to networking events. We don't get involved in the Chamber of Commerce. Why? Because we don't got the time, because we got to do our business and then we have to administrate our businesses. So I think those are the main keys here, Carl. The strategic, the personal, and the financial benefits really leave us with one question: is when do we start doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of things that come to mind, first and foremost, I think one of the hesitations a lot of entrepreneurs have is, how can I ensure quality of the work? This person's, different country. How am I going to make sure that the deliverables that they give me are what I need?
Yeah, and look, that's a great place to start, because if you don't have standard operating procedures set up in the business, we're not ready for the virtual team. What do I mean by standard operating procedures? I mean this, that you've structured your business where when, let's just say, a client inquiry comes into our inbox. Let's just use the most common thing that's happening, right? Boom, someone wants to buy one of our services. Okay, if you don't have a step-by-step, here's 1, 2, 3, it goes to this person. 4, you get them this. 5, it goes this. 6, this. If you don't have it laid out step-by-step on a Google Doc, then what happens is you can't ensure the quality of any employee. Even if they're in the office, Carl, let's say we hire someone in the office to come in physically. If you don't have the step-by-steps, what happens is that even that person physically sitting at the desk could mess up, could be on social media, could be doing other things because we haven't created the standard operating procedures for when this particular situation happens. You do these 20 things. When businesses start to build their businesses around these standard operating procedures, what happens is that we don't need to be there micromanaging and overseeing them 24/7. We actually don't have to be babysitting them to make sure they're doing their work. Why? Because the process, the steps in the process will tell us whether they did their work or not. It's like you did not complete this particular KPI, therefore it must be that you weren't actually doing the work. And so it stops becoming about overseeing and micromanaging, and it starts becoming a numbers game. Did you complete this file? Did you see this thing all the way through? Yes or no? No? Well, let's talk about that. Where in the process do we need to adjust things? What education do I need to give you? What resources do I need to open up to you so that you complete those? And that's where we're going to discover, did they do their job or not?
Absolutely. I think you hit on such a critical element. Whether you are using virtual teams or not, so many businesses are struggling because there is no standardized process. It's
It's all in the head of the entrepreneur.
That's it.
Or it's in the head of another person in the office. Let's just say her name is Tammy, and Tammy is like the person that wears 6 hats in the office and knows everything. She knows the accounting software. She knows the CRM. She also knows all the vendors. But guess what? If Tammy got hit by a bus tomorrow, we'd be stuck.
Absolutely.
God bless Tammys of all of the offices.
That's right.
Because they are superstars, but we need to not, but it's dangerous to rely on Tammy the whole entire time. We need to duplicate Tammy. I should have a service called Duplicate Tammy.
Exactly. I think that's a great one. So here's another concern that I think we hear quite a bit is what are there tax implications? How do we pay somebody that's working for us virtually in another country? What is there a simplified solution to making all that happen?
Yeah, also the hardest part of it is paying these employees, because some of them are in countries where, gosh, it's like PayPal can't even pay them, Zelle can't send it. You got to get creative with how you're sending the money. Do you send it as a service? Do you send it as family and friends? There's just a lot of complications in that payment process. And if you're building your own virtual team, it does get complicated because now you've given yourselves payroll, but payroll that can't happen through ADP. This is payroll that you're going to have to get in and do yourself manually. What my company does, Virtrify, is we are business development partners with our clients. So we're going in to each client and saying, these are all the tasks that someone in another country can do, right? Where are the holes in your company? What do you want to fill them with? And we're going to help you create the job description, the SOPs for that person. We're going to be your virtual HR department. And we're going to make sure they're using their 20 hours or their 40 hours. But we're also the one that pays them. And here's the critical part is that this is actually the beautiful part. You're paying for an employee on your credit card. When's the last time you paid your employee on your credit card and you got points for it, right? No, our employees are on W-2, payroll, whatever. This goes on your credit card, right? So let's say your employee is $1,000 a month. Cool, you're gonna see $1,000 a month, but that line item is paid to us, Virtrify, here in the US. We're a consulting company, so it comes as a consulting cost, all right, on your line item. It doesn't go on HR. So what happens is you're not paying employee payroll or employee taxes or filing for an employee because we're the company. We're the ones doing that, right, on our end. So we got to pay them. We got to convert the money. We got to submit to the IRS that this employee is an international employee because they really work for us, but they're your employee. So it's a really beautiful arrangement that we've created.
Excellent. And then as far as, you know, that working relationship, so they work for the business owner, but you are going to be the formal connection point, if you will. So when you have, let's say, an issue where an employer has a problem with their virtual employee, what are the steps they should take to resolve that?
Every client gets a customer success manager. This person is your HR manager. So if you had if you had a really big company, you would likely have an HR manager in-house. And if you had a problem with an employee, you could either take it up directly with that employee, or what bigger companies do is that they just they talk to the HR person. The HR person then talks to the employee. And so in our situation, if the relationship with that employee is directly yours, right? They're your customer success manager, or they're your executive assistant, whatever. You're communicating with them. You'll have a WhatsApp group with them. They have an email address that's your email address. Like, it's just a normal employee. But if you had a problem with them, you don't have to take it up with them. You could tell us, your customer success manager, and they can now deal with this issue. But it's more likely that an issue won't come up because we're creating SOPs so that issues don't come up. It's more likely, Carl, what clients do is that they're asking for another employee. They're asking us to recruit another person because it works so well with this position. Why not with the next position? So your customer success manager is your HR manager. So they'll actually initiate recruitment, but they can also, of course, talk to an employee that might not be working as hard as maybe the entrepreneur wants. Maybe there's some issues that they came to work late or showed up to a meeting late, or they want to fix something in that relationship. They can use us as that buffer.
Okay, excellent. And then I know another question people are going to have is what about communication? Language issues, and that's a lot of people have had experiences on other platforms with freelancers or virtual people that they got in there and couldn't hardly communicate. So how do you ensure that communication is going to be smooth? How do you ensure that that flow is going to work well?
Yeah, it's probably one of the top questions is language, right? Do they speak English? So in Venezuela, you're dealing with a country where English was taught in school. So they do have a Latin accent. Now in the United States, we're not, a Latin accent is not seen negatively. And in fact, I think for some clients, having someone that can speak Spanish is actually really good for their business, because the fastest growing segment of consumers in the United States are Hispanics. So your business, if you hire a virtual team member from us, you're getting a Spanish speaking employee. But we're sending you videos beforehand, and you're watching videos of these people and you're listening to their English, and you're thinking to yourself, A, can I deal with this accent? Right? B, can my clients deal with this accent? if it's a client-facing position. So you're listening to it and you're kind of evaluating it, and then you're saying, all right, that's cool, because in Venezuela, we're an employment agency. So when they come to us, they're filling out a profile, they're doing an English exam, they're doing a personality test. So we know the proficiency of English of each person. And if the client says, man, they need to be a rock star at English, well, then of course we're just recruiting at a higher proficiency for English. And now that's not always the case, Carl, for all of virtual assistants or virtual team members, because this whole industry started out in the Philippines and in India and Pakistan. So what happens is a lot of entrepreneurs still have it in their mind that when you're building virtual teams or getting virtual assistants, you're having people with an Eastern accent, and sometimes that accent is not appreciated here for whatever reason or another. And so that's something that we don't experience on this hemisphere, because a Spanish accent isn't seen the same way.
Excellent, excellent. So let's kind of talk about your screening process for clients to make sure you have a good fit. How do you make sure that a client of Virtrify is really a good fit for your services?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it starts with a discovery call. Really, it starts by understanding what's their need. And that then leads to the conversation of if we can even fulfill on that need. I've had clients, Carl, they call and they say, hey, I need a cold caller, right? Someone that's going to cold call all day long. And I have to tell them sometimes, listen, I've tried the cold call thing, and they get really burnt out very fast. So I recommend you contract a cold call center, right? Because that's what they specialize in, that's what they do. But the discovery call will usually, like 99 out of 100 times, it'll be something that we can help them fulfill on, is something that we can find for them, which leads then to the next session that we have with them. It's called a Virtrification Analysis Consultation. This is where, after discovering that we can fulfill on a position, we're having a Zoom call and we're asking them everything that this person's going to do. What are their tasks? How does the process work from beginning to end? And we're really analyzing that process. We're creating a job description from that process. We're even creating a training program from that process, so that the person that we're hiring is coming into a set position. Because as you talked about earlier, Carl, not every company has these SOPs in place. And we discovered on our end that if we didn't have this critical discovery call and this critical session in between, if I introduce you to Carlos and Carlos starts working for you, no one's going to win in that relationship, because Carlos is going to be frustrated because he's waiting around for work. You're going to be frustrated with Carlos because Carlos ain't working and you're paying for him. And we're going to be frustrated because the whole thing's going to break apart. So we have to we on our end, Virtrify, had to create this system of evaluating, of pulling out is this person doing, so that we can then create the proper onboarding, so that this relationship is retained and it's fruitful and it works.
Excellent. And then, last couple of things here. When we talk about building, virtual teams, you and I both have had the experience of we've successfully built businesses using virtual teams. I think for a lot of business owners, though, this is kind of a new concept. Hiring not particularly in-house, not somebody that's going to come to your place of business every day, but hiring somebody that's going to work remotely from a different country. And so when we talk about that, as you've kind of observed companies use this virtual team process to build with, what do you think are some of the I'm going to call them foundational places that somebody could use a virtual team member to start scaling up their business to a higher level?
Great question. And I'll usually start with a basic position. If it's a solopreneur, or maybe someone who has maybe one employee or two, they are in critical need of an executive assistant. This is a right-hand person that knows every part of the business. They could communicate with clients, but at the same time, they could collect payments, they could pay bills, they can answer leads, they can get into the CRM. This right-hand person is so critical. It's the first hire that every single entrepreneur needs, okay? So the smaller the business is, the more critical that you have your first hire be an executive assistant. Why? Because as the company scales and grows, you are going to need more specialized people that maybe that executive assistant does 5 jobs, right? And now you're growing so much that you need one person actually now to handle leads that are coming into the business, sort of this appointment setter / salesperson. And so what happens is the executive assistant now finds his or her replacement and trains that person on what they need to do. The executive assistant now removes the hat, gives it to this person, and the executive assistant becomes more of a manager now for you and helps you build your virtual team below you. Let's say though, Carl, they already have an executive assistant, or there's already Tammy in the office who does all of this stuff. Well, now it's about, I think the number one position, the next position that needs to be hired is someone who's going to manage the incoming leads that are coming in, right? So companies like yours, Carl, you're doing marketing. You're doing a great job at filling in that, giving them leads, bringing them leads into their inbox, right? But how many times, Carl, do marketing companies like ours get frustrated that we're bringing in all of these leads, but they're not following up within X amount of time? And then they do, let's say they do follow up, but then the follow through isn't happening, right? And quotes are not getting followed up on in the right manner. And then let's just say they are followed up on, but now we've got to complete this service, and at the end ask for a review, right? Ask for a testimonial. So it's so the whole process isn't being done fully 100%. And so what happened, what the opportunity that a lot of entrepreneurs have right now is you can get an $11 an hour employee to be this client experience coordinator, right? They're not the project manager, they're not the account manager, they're not the one bringing the project to life and fulfilling all the work. Instead, this person is making sure that this customer has a great experience from beginning to end. So they are getting to the lead in a timely fashion. They're communicating with that lead all the way through to the process of getting the service done. And then once the service is done, they're closing that lead out and saying, hey, thank you so much. Do you have some referrals that you can give us? Maybe would you leave a review for us? Hey, can I call you and get a testimonial from you so that we can get a proper case study from you? That client experience coordinator is what every entrepreneur that does business right wants that level of service for every client. We just can't afford to do it because everyone in the company is wearing too many hats to be that deep of a level of customer service. But now we can, because these people are only $11 an hour. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be providing this high level of customer service, which leads to more referrals.
Absolutely. I had a mentor many years ago that had me take a look at everything I was doing. And he asked me, what is your hourly rate? And he says, now what out of all of those things could you hire somebody for a much lower hourly rate to accomplish? And then he encouraged me, clear out all of those things. And so I think that is one of the keys to growth, to scaling up, is identifying those places where based on your time, your talent, your skills, somebody else should be doing that particular work. So great stuff. So let's talk through this. If somebody wants to learn more about Virtrify, where can they go? And what's the best way to get in contact with you or to learn more?
Yes, they can go to virtrify.com. And on the top right, it says get started, and just fill out that form. And then one of our customer experience coordinators is going to start to communicate with you about your needs. And then we'll have that discovery call, which will lead to a virtrification analysis consultation. So yeah, virtrify.com is where you would go to get started with us.
Fantastic. So Alex, any final thoughts that you want to share with our audience today?
It's transformational, the impact that this will have on your current business and all of your future businesses. When I uncovered this skill set and I started to apply it to my business, and not just businesses, it transformed me into a true entrepreneur. A true entrepreneur is someone who can solve problems and build a machine to solve that problem, so he or she can move on to solve another problem. This is what we get to become when we build out teams in general, right? Employees. But when we do it with virtual teams, we can do it a lot faster because it's less expensive to build that team up.
Fantastic. Alex, it's been great having you today. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for sharing about your company, your services, and really this whole concept of using virtual teams. And if you're listening today and you're ready to scale, you need to give some serious thought to making this a part of your scaling process. So thanks again.
Thank you for having me, Carl.
You bet.